welcome into another podcast episode for Coatings Pro Magazine. I'm Stephanie Chiswick, and I'm Editor-in-Chief of Coatings Pro. Today we have with us Aaron Moore, who is a commercial painting business owner and co-founder of the Commercial Painting Industry Association, and that began in 2019 with Steve Hester. CPIA's mission is to nurture a peer-based community of industry experts dedicated to learning and development through collaboration. They do that through peer groups, events, webcasts, and I'm sure much more. So thanks so much for joining us today, Aaron.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Why don't you go ahead and start by kind of giving our listeners a bit of your background as well as the background for CPIA?
Yeah, sure. So I own a commercial painting company based in the Chicago market. So the company is PPD Painting, formerly Precision Painting and Decorating, some people know us by. And we are essentially, medium to large commercial painting contractor focused on kind of office, warehouse, multifamily. It's kind of, obviously it's a moving target these days with different industries kind of taking the lead and other industries kind of falling off, but we painted everything from shopping malls to schools, hospitals, you name it. So that's my background. And then my partner in the business, Steve Hester, he's also a commercial painting contractor in the Chicago market. He's a union contractor. I am not union. And we just kind of had we were always, bouncing some stuff off of each other. We're personal friends, and just kind of said, hey, there's not a resource out there for commercial painting contractors that is, helping us, to connect with other owners in the industry. And we are, I was a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, and he was a member of Young Presidents Organization. Those are both, forum or peer group based organizations. So we just kind of put our heads together and said, hey, we could start something that would benefit the industry, and kind of our way of kind of pooling resources to give back. So that's kind of why we're on the call today.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that people might not quite understand the benefit to peers. Essentially you could be seen as competitors if you're in the same market, but there's so much more to the relationship and benefits that you can get out of it. Is that kind of the background of what CPIA is?
Absolutely. I mean, in our actual peer groups, which I'm sure we'll get into later, it is non-competing, but there's still a huge benefit even to have peers that you compete against or that are in your network. They say like the rising tide raises all ships, right? So if we're all getting better, we're all doing better, it's a better competitor to have. And quite frankly, if you have a place that is kind of your niche, you may have someone that is in the same business as you that would be deem themselves as another commercial painting contractor, but say, for example, they may not do epoxy floor coatings, and you do epoxy floor coatings. So that relationship could bring you business, or they specialize in something that you don't do, maybe wall covering installation. And so maybe we send work their way that fits their niche, and they send work our way. So I think that there's always a benefit to, having people in the industry, even in your own market that are your peers, that you are able to have a good working relationship.
Yeah, I've at least come across a few just, with the stories that we write in Coatings Pro, where someone may have, like you just said, gotten an epoxy job because of a partnership that they have with someone who does something, maybe overlaps a little bit, but not like they're not in that niche market, so to speak. So I could definitely see the benefit in those kinds of relationships. Do you want to maybe kind of right now go into what the peer groups is at CPIA? I think that seems like one of the main benefits of your association.
Sure, I can kind of give you, we just recently announced a 2-tier membership. So we do have a CPIA, just a general membership that is without the peer group. So maybe I'll start there and then kind of go into the peer groups, and then we can go from there if that's okay with you.
That sounds great. Yeah, start at the beginning.
So, what we initially, when we launched, we had just a peer group. You had to join a peer group. But what we found is that some people just weren't ready to make that commitment to monthly 2-hour meetings and meeting in person a couple times a year. And it's a pretty significant commitment, but we think it has significant advantages. So we've just announced kind of an annual membership, which will entitle you to kind of industry partnerships that we've made. We have discounts on products. We have free gifts that a lot of the vendors are getting. They get we have a quarterly publication that's starting next year, so they'll get a publication in the mail. We've made a commitment with HR firm Xenium, which you'll get all of their online trainings for your employees. You'll get updates to HR policies for your state. We also have, Paint Bid Tracker. We've got a partnership with them, so members of CPIA will have access to Paint Bid Tracker, which is a huge one. I mean, I think that's about $950 a state for a license, so that's a pretty big one. And then obviously we're going to be having, hopefully by next year, we'll be getting back to somewhat of a normalcy where we can have events in person. And that kind of leads me into the peer. So, our focus is kind of share, connect, grow. That's what we say. So we want to be an organization that's sharing information amongst, what we would call doers. So it's not the talking heads. It's people that are actually in the trenches that are running commercial painting companies, not people telling you how to run a commercial painting company or how to get rich in a commercial painting company. Like, the reality is the people in our organization are already successful business people that want to bounce each other ideas off of each other, and then building those connections allows us to grow our businesses. So that's really where the peer groups come into play. So the peer group is we basically interview for the peer groups. We place people in peer groups. We facilitate and get the peer groups up and running. Now we have kind of a best practices for how we think. We give agendas and updates and, set up how the meetings are run, and there's a lot to it. And we use professional facilitators for that to get the groups off the ground. And then the groups become self-sustaining, and we just help monitor that and offer assistance to the groups as they continue on their journey. So that's we do have kind of our best practices, so you meet once every 30 to 45 days. The groups are made up of 7 to 10 fellow painting contractors. So they would all be, owners of painting contractors. We do have some requirements as far as size to be in a peer group, based on the other companies in the groups. But we do kind of let the groups decide how they want to set up their kind of, constitution or rules and regulations. We give them kind of a sample and a way to do it, and then we let them take it from there.
And you guys, you're both, you and Steve are both from that Chicagoland area, but I'm assuming that this expands kind of outside, maybe nationally or even internationally. How does that work? Where's the, where is it?
Yeah, so, our goal eventually is to be fully global, hopefully, but right now we are international to the tune of North America. So my personal peer group, just to speak, I think it's probably more beneficial than to just start listing off companies, has a contractor from Florida, a contractor from Boston, contractor from Southern Utah, a contractor from Portland, a contractor from outside of Toronto somewhere, myself from Chicago. So just to kind of give you an idea. So we're kind of all over the place, but so we don't compete against each other directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like that's probably right now, since, we're obviously recording this during the pandemic, we've kind of had to shift to doing a lot of things virtual, which it sounds like you are already doing. So you were kind of set up within your peer group to be able to meet probably still from your home computers or, offices or what have you. Is that the case?
Yeah. So what we suggest is, obviously we did run into a little bit. So we would meet. So we would have kind of meet in person 2 to 4 times a year. It kind of depends on your group and your, desire for travel. A couple shop tours. So like, for example, I would host a meeting at my office in Chicago area. And so then they'd come in maybe in an afternoon, we'd do a shop tour, my tour, they'd get to meet some of my staff, see how my business runs. We could have I would organize something whether it be, just some appetizers or something, and then we'd hang out at my shop for that evening and then have our meetings the following day. And then we also we encourage one retreat a year, which is just a trip for fun where you do some business planning, but it's also about building a close personal relationship with those in your peer group. And then we'll have our annual conference. So we kind of think that, like, in a best case scenario, you'd travel 4 times. The meetings are quick, so the travel turnaround is pretty fast. You can obviously extend it if you like, but the actual commitment for travel would be Like we're meeting in January in Arizona, and we will be landing on Sunday, meet Monday, do an activity Monday afternoon, meet Tuesday morning, and fly out Tuesday afternoon. Okay. So it's like a 48-hour thing. So it's not a huge commitment as far as we're not meeting for a full week or anything. It's just a quick trip just to see each other and kind of keep that connection going. But then there is obviously the virtual meetings go in between that. So something between 7 and 9 virtual meetings in the middle.
Okay. So I feel like that's definitely, you've sort of touched on maybe what, contractors need probably in general and specifically right now is that connection, whether it's in person if possible, and obviously availability as well as virtually. Is there anything else that you can see maybe that's going on right now that the contractors are needing, challenges that they need to overcome?
Sure. I mean, obviously, I think, it goes without saying that in the COVID era and stuff, we've all kind of had to look at our business model and look at what we're doing and make sure that we're bringing value to the customers that we're serving, and we have to identify the markets that we serve. It's no different than in '08 when the housing market, if you were painting new construction homes, you were in trouble. And so you had to make some sort of a pivot. And I think one of the things that we've found is we actually increased our frequency of meetings right at the beginning of COVID just to kind of have a group of people that are all in the same position, all going, okay, what do we do next? Mm-hmm. And, each of us were trying things on our own, and some of us were able to come back and say, hey, we tried this thing, we had great success, or hey, we tried this thing and flushed 10 grand down the toilet trying it and it didn't work.
Yeah, don't try that.
It's nice to get that feedback like in real time as these challenges and opportunities come. And there's no, it's not a rule. Like, we give you a scenario to say like, hey, you should meet once a month or every 45 days. But when something comes up, we'll have a meeting. If there's something somebody needs to talk about, we can have a meeting that can be really quick. And it's just to have this, the people that you've shared a lot that know, and when you're meeting at this cadence, they're familiar with your business. They know that who your right-hand man is. You're talking about them. So I think that's one of the things. The other thing I think is that we're working on and working towards is training for key people in your organization. So the organization, the commercial painting contractors that we're serving tend to be larger scale. So they're going to have, a director of field operations or some sort of superintendent type role. They're going to have an office manager. They're going to have estimators. They're going, it's not a one person and a few painters. Right. These are more substantial organizations. So what we're working on is to try to extend that peer group to key man peer groups, so that whether that be peer groups that help with sales and estimating, whether that's peer groups that help with field operations, so that you can take, I think what, my dream and where I'm trying to get, where we are trying to get this to go would be to say, hey, let's take our field ops guys and put them in a peer group. You get 8 of them or 9 of them together to talk about what's working and not working. That's a hard job in our industry, mm-hmm. So you get them together to talk about it. I think the improvement to your business would just be so significant, and so that's our goal going forward as well, is to just provide opportunities to learn for our key personnel.
Calling all coatings contractors, we have a great resource for you. Coatings Pro magazine provides you with the latest news, trends, and technologies for your coating needs. And the best part, it's completely free to anyone who signs up. Simply visit coatingspromag.com/subscribe. Coatings Pro, know what the pros know.
Do you see, this is not a leading question, so let me know if the answer is no, but do you see any big differences between commercial painters and industrial ones as far as the challenges and opportunities that are going on right now or in general?
I'm not an industrial contractor, and I never have been, and I don't claim to be. So I have to be careful. I would, from my perspective as a commercial painting contractor, sure. I see some of I think that the peer group model could be beneficial to anybody. Don't get me wrong. I think that it would work for industrial contractors. And I think, we have people in our peer group that, like, some of them split residential commercial, some of them split commercial industrial, some of them do the whole gamut. So it's not to say that it's not for industrial contractors. And I think the line between industrial and and commercial can be fine. But when I think about industrial, I think about a lot of more, it's a more monitored, certified, a certified industry that has a lot of, training and requirements. And, you have a lot more, I would say, technical parts of that than you do have when you're, painting walls in an office versus inside a, contained tank, sandblasting and applying flammable coatings.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying, it sounds like, is maybe it's a bit more structured as far as the requirements. Like you just said, you have to have certifications and that kind of thing. And obviously, just kind of a different game, I guess, for lack of a better word for it. Yeah.
Not that look, I think it's great. And I think, if we can influence, but we're not trying, we think that the SSPC does a great job, and we're not here to step on their toes whatsoever.
Right.
That organization exists as is super successful and does a great job with industrial contractors. And, it's our goal to kind of pick our lane and try to provide a service to our lane.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just thinking, like I said, I think the commercial, it sounds like the commercial industry is probably benefiting from your association because of there's a real need there for that type of support, the peer groups, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, thanks. We agree.
Yeah. What does the future, do you think, look like for commercial painting as far as the industry goes, as far as, what do you see coming down the pike, maybe in the next year, 5 years, or what have you?
Well, I think, as far as the actual commercial painting market is concerned, like, where are you going to be painting? What are we going to be painting? I think that, that's always a moving target, depending on what industries are hot. Right now, obviously, we realize that we can't be just in time to China. So, you're going to see more warehousing, more big boxes. And we're also seeing retail change dramatically to delivery to your home, right? So, that Amazon effect. So I think that in that world, we're going to see a decline in some businesses, maybe be it retail or and maybe a decline in office, depending on if more people continue to work from home. I think that in our world of painting, though, volatility is more important than whether you're moving up or down. So if people are changing offices, for example, you have a 50,000 square foot office, and now you're only going to be at 25% capacity in your office, so you downsize by 50%. You usually paint when you move out, and you paint when you move in. So it's a good opportunity for us in the short term, depending on what happens. We haven't really seen a lot of office movement just yet, but I think people are still kind of holding their breath to see if it goes back to normal or what changes. It's still too early to tell. Generally, in the face of the commercial painting industry, though, what I think you see is you're starting to see a trend towards, I don't want to call it a new guard. There's always a certain demographic that's kind of rolling off and a new demographic coming on. And I think what you're seeing, even, I'm 42 years old, and so I'm kind of right in the middle of it. But I think what you're seeing is, like, if I was 62 years old, I'm probably looking, how am I going to transition out of my business? And, me being 42, I was at the front end of computers in college and, learning all of that. So I think you're going to see the technical, the tech savviness of these companies increase. I think that, like, if you want to be on the front edge of commercial painting contracting and you still don't have solid project management platform and solid proposal delivery systems, and, you're trying to, people would say, like, keep it old school, I think you're going to get left behind quickly, because the people that are coming up behind you are really, really good at that stuff. I mean, way better than I am. Mm-hmm. And, so if you're not evolving in that manner, then I think that could spell trouble. So that's one of the things that I would say the future of commercial painting looks like is, apps and technology platforms and monitoring things. And, it's something that I've been able to do. I personally live 1,400 miles from where my office is. So I run most of my business from behind a computer screen at this point. And we've worked really hard over the past 5 years to put those systems in place to be able to do that. And I think you'll see more and more of that.
Yeah, and are you also seeing, like a lot of other areas, that sort of the labor shortage or challenges with, I mean, I can't believe we're still saying this because the millennials are our age basically, are you still seeing challenges with the younger generations or any sort of, those labor opportunities or challenges going on right now?
I think labor is always a challenge. I mean, I think, there's different challenges, right? So, it's, there's I think we're challenged. Part of it is cultural, right? So I think if you have a good culture in your organization, I think you can still motivate people. And it's just different people look for different things in organizations. And I think we have to just be creative and find, how can we be a great place to work? What's working? And that's one of the things that I like about, I mean, we have a couple companies in our peer group, in my personal peer group, that have well over 100 employees. And, we're going, and I'm always looking to them to say, like, hey, what are you doing that's working? And is it, with the video communicate, things have changed so much. I mean, you can get a message to every single person that works in your organization, looking them in the eye without ever being in front of them through video in a matter of seconds, and that's something new. So I do think that hiring is always going to be a challenge, but like what I say is, if Home Depot can staff Home Depots all over the country with $12 an hour employees, we can certainly staff painters around the country when we pay, double, triple, quadruple that.
Right. That's a good point. And I think it is probably, like you're saying, labor's always going to be a concern, whether it's, the number of people going out are more than the number of people coming in, or, the new interests in software, like you're also saying, there's always different things going on, probably no matter what age you are or where you are in the industry.
Exactly. And I think, it's a company's duty to, figure out how are we going to train these people, or, train our new employees and train our new hires. I mean, if you have, the great organizations and these great, like, corporate machines in the world, even if you look at, McDonald's, right? I mean, granted, it doesn't take rocket science to figure out how to make French fries, but they have systems in place to train the guy that makes French fries how to make French fries, So are we doing that, or do we just expect someone to learn how to paint and just throw them in the field? So, hopefully, in time, the CPIA will be able to help with that as well. We have, one of our goals for the future, we kind of vision out what it looks like is, Painters U, and having a Painters University that helps with, training and, and I don't, the skills part can be always trained. The personal part and the management part and the leadership part and the inherent motivation part is a little bit more difficult to train. So that's what I think we kind of focus on.
Yeah, and then to kind of circle back to what you were saying earlier, I mean, I could see the huge opportunity. So for when those guys who are maybe, when they've gotten to be at a higher level at the skill and they want to become a team leader, what does that look like? There could be training opportunities there. And again, what you were saying, maybe an opportunity to have peer groups on that level as well. So many opportunities going on, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's what we've kind of tried to do with this by partnering with Xenium HR, is they have some great platforms. And so as a member, you get access to their online training. And I think, I've watched a bunch of them personally, and I send them to my team who's, if someone's in charge of, coaching, they have coaching modules that tries to help them. So, we're working with our director of safety and training and our director of field operations all the time to just say, if we can get them better at their job, they'll they'll help the other guys get better. And if we can put those things in place, so it's really just a kind of, I'd say it's just kind of a waterfall effect, if you will.
Yeah, totally. You just brought up safety. That makes me think too. I know there's some new standards. Well, not necessarily new anymore, but particularly with silica. Is there any other sort of updates going on as far as safety is going? That might affect the commercial painting industry.
I think all of us have had to. The COVID stuff has been really our big one, right? So the silica has been around for a little while now, and it's For a lot of commercial painting contractors, it affects. Some of them it doesn't. It just kind of depends on what your kind of niche is. I mean, if you're painting offices and drywall surfaces, you don't have too much to worry about there. But if you're, grinding floors, it's a different story. But now with the COVID stuff, we're trying to figure out, like, how do we, it's part of it's safety, part of it's also figuring out how do we, we want to keep the guys. So what our goal is let's follow the mandates, whether it be mask mandates or whether that be a policy. And that just seems like it makes good sense right now anyways. And then the second piece of it is like, okay, so maybe in the past we had guys working closer proximity to each other. Well, what I'd like to see is we don't want the guys within 6 or 8 feet of each other. If they stay away from each other, if one guy comes down with it, it doesn't take out the whole crew.
Right.
But if you have one guy cutting in one, in the past, you might, an example would be you'd have one guy cutting in an office or something and a guy right behind him rolling, and they're working right next to each other all day. Well, now we might want to look at that differently and say, you don't come in this office until he's done cutting or something, so just as a kind of practical example, like a real world example. So trying to build protocols that help keep the employees safe and also keep us that mitigate downtime. I mean, the fact of the matter is people are going to get sick. It's going to happen. It's pretty well shown. I mean, people, hundreds of thousands of people are catching this thing all the time. So if we could mitigate the negative impact it has on our business, it definitely certainly would help. So that's some of the training stuff and safety stuff that we've been working towards.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it sounds like it makes sense to me. So hopefully other people are kind of picking up on the same cues maybe. So, well, Aaron, is there anything else that you want to mention before we close up?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I can give my email address. Anybody is welcome to reach out to me. My email address is Aaron, Aaron, at P like Peter, D like David, painting.com. So if you have any questions, otherwise our website for the CPIA is thecpia.com, thecpia.com. And there's information that goes into the membership levels and pricing, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. You can contact us. Beth Thompson is our executive director, so any inquiries she'll respond to right away. And then if it needs to put us in contact with Steve or I, we're happy to have a chat about it. And the other thing that I would just like to mention is we are a new organization. We don't have what you won't hear here is, well, we're doing it that way because that's how we've always done it. Mm-hmm. That's just not what we are. We're all ears, and we're here to serve. So if we can serve your organization or one of your audience's organization in a way that would be beneficial, we'd like to hear what people want. So if you say, hey, this would be what our company could really use, and we hear that enough times, communicate with us, because we're really looking at this as an association where we're pooling the resources of our member to produce the content or the things that our membership asks for. So that's really the goal of this at the end of the day, and what we're trying to accomplish, that we've, that ultimately is why we started the organization, because of frustration that we couldn't get that anywhere else.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's such a good lesson. Get in at the beginning, and you can make a big impact. So we'll be sure to share your information on the show notes. So thank you so much, Aaron, again, for all of your time and for sharing some of what CPIA does with our listeners. And looking forward to seeing what you guys do in the future, and maybe how we can collaborate again. Thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Any way we can help.